Good morning and welcome to another edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Let's jump right into this morning by bringing in the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis, Jr. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey Brown. And on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, representing 230 African-American owned newspapers, media companies all over the United States, led by our distinguished chair, Karen Carter Richards of the Forward Times in Houston, Texas. We're ready to go this morning with the headlines, and we certainly are looking forward to welcoming the Honorable Karen Bass.
Absolutely. And we begin this morning with an update from the trial of the three men in Georgia who are on trial for killing Ahmaud Arbery. Joining us right now at the top is freelance journalist Pat Bryant, who has been in the courtroom each morning. Good morning, Pat Bryant.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. You've been in the courtroom each morning, I'm told, each day. We are in week 2 of this trial. What is the feeling inside the courtroom as testimony happens?
Well, the lawyer for one of the defendants is really trying to tell the jury that this is a racial trial and that prominent people in the Black community are attending the trial in order to intimidate them. So he's trying to drive the message home to jurors that they should not be intimidated.
And so the defense, we know, tried to bar Al Sharpton and other Black clergy members. And this week, he even objected to Jesse Jackson's presence and even criticized the civil rights legend for not having his mask on properly. First, as a journalist, what did you make of that request by the defense, and how was it perceived inside the courtroom?
Well, the judge rejected it. But the judge, this is almost a kangaroo situation. The judge allowed almost an all-white jury, 11 whites and 1 Black. It's not clear how the jurors are receiving the various messages that these white guys were defending themselves when actually they were the ones with guns. They chased down Mr. Arbery, and killed him. And then when the police came, we seen on the video in court that they did nothing to save Mr. Arbery's life.
Yeah, and finally, before we let you go this morning, just wanted to get a sense. You are in the courtroom. You see the defendants, Greg and Travis McMichael and William Bryant. What's their demeanor? Can you give us a sense of their demeanor, and perhaps who else is in the courtroom as far as supporters or of the defendants or supporters of Mr. Arbery?
Yeah, this is like no other courtroom that I've been in lately. The courtroom first is very small, can only accommodate the families and a few people. Then there's an overflow room of where you've got journalists and whatnot and other people looking on. This is such a closed set that you can't get much response. The defendants are emotionless, basically, and the guy putting on the show is the lawyer for the one of the defendants. So he's charging the thing up, and he's trying to get some bite back. He's putting out bait, and he's trying to get bite back from us to charge the situation.
He's trying to win the headlines, really more so than the case, right?
Yeah, yeah. He doesn't have any. The facts are not with him, so he's trying to rely on emotion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Mr. Bryant,
he's trying to rev up.
Yeah,
racism.
we yeah, it's great to get a firsthand look at what's going on inside that courtroom. We're grateful that you are there and able to report back to us. We look forward to hearing some more from you in the days to come. Thank you so much for taking out the time this morning to join us. We really appreciate it. And now joining us this morning, Westside Gazette publisher Bobby Henry down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and NNPA journalist and host of the Burke File, Lauren Burke. Good morning, Bobby. Good morning, Lauren. And again, good morning to Dr. Chavis as well. Thanks for joining us this morning. Big morning ahead of us. Just real brief before we jump into the Congresswoman, just want to get a quick sense, Lauren, about the Ahmaud Arbery trial, what you just heard from Pat Murphy, and what you've been hearing all along.
Well, obviously, the attorney, the lead defense attorney, is trying to get the judge, who is not going along with it so far, at least, to declare a mistrial over various pastors being in the courtroom, namely, as you just heard, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. There's a trip planned down to Georgia by at least 200 pastors next week. So this is I'm sure we're going to hear about this again next week from this defense attorney. And I think that the reaction from the judge is important here. He doesn't seem to be buying this argument at all. And I find it difficult to believe that he would ban Black pastors from the courtroom, because it is a public courtroom. Whoever wants to come into the courtroom, who can get in or be online, be in queue in line, can get in the courtroom. So I doubt the judge is going to go along with the defense attorney's motion.
Yeah. And Bobby Henry, the Westside Gazette, your take on what's going on there in Georgia? You're on mute, Bobby.
Good morning. And
Good morning.
I know you guys don't want me on mute. But anyway, to the reporter's point, when he said it was the strangest courtroom he's been in, he must not have been up in Wisconsin. So it seems to be the motive of operation for these courts under the systemic racism. But what I have witnessed, or what I'm understanding about this, is that it is something that the courts, those courts that feel that there's no justification for taking, there is justification for taking Black lives, and they're sticking to it by any means necessary. So
Yeah.
That's where I am right now with this.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue to follow that. As we know, yesterday, the president signed a very important act into law, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Dr. Chavis, why don't you do the honors and introducing our special guest this morning?
Well, thank you very much. And our guest is no stranger to the Black press. He's a strong supporter of the Black press, the Honorable Karen Bass, a member of Congress representing Los Angeles. We've been together many years, and now she's a candidate to be the mayor of the great city of Los Angeles. We welcome her back to the Black press of America.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show, Dr. Chavis.
Quite welcome.
Well, thank you. And Congresswoman, before we get to all the great things about this infrastructure bill, I've got to ask you this question, though, and I'm going to read just a little bit from this investigative report that broke the other day on CNN. And the part of the report, obviously, is about our Vice President Kamala Harris and the relationship with President Joe Biden. And the report in part reads, and I'm quoting, "Worn out by what they see as entrenched dysfunction and lack of focus, key West Wing aides have largely thrown up their hands at Vice President Kamala Harris and her staff, deciding there simply isn't time to deal with them right now, especially at a moment when President Joe Biden faces quickly multiplying legislative and political concerns. The exasperation runs both ways. Interviews with nearly 36 former and current Harris aides, administration officials, Democratic operatives, donors, and outside advisors who spoke extensively to the network reveal a complex reality inside the White House. Many in the vice president's circle film that she's not being adequately prepared or positioned, and instead is being sidelined. I just wanted to get your response to that. I know that you were on that list as vice president, and you were vetted as vice president anyway. But your response to that?
Well, first of all, yes, I was. Yes, I did go through the process. And being from California, I am very proud that Kamala Harris is our vice president, and Californian, former attorney general, former senator. And I don't think that it is a shock to see the attacks that she has had to withstand. I mean, as the first Black South Asian woman, first woman, period, I don't think it should be a shock. I think that it is just ridiculous, though, the amount of vitriol that is sent her way. Now, I have no idea what's going on in the White House, but what I do know is that some of the assignments that she has been given are extremely difficult assignments for her to address the root causes of immigration, which means the economic devastation and problems that they have in Central America. I mean, that's a tall feat. I can't imagine anybody actually doing that. And then voting rights, two things. You know, I mean, the voting rights issue is a question of the filibuster in the Senate. And I don't think it's fair to expect her to solve that. So I see these attacks as part and parcel of her being the first woman and first Black woman vice president.
Yeah, and I'm going to let our journalists, our publisher, and our CEO jump in here. Lauren, Bobby, Dr. Chavis, I know you have questions for the Congresswoman.
I'll yield to the lady
go
first.
ahead, Bobby.
I'll
wait.
No, I'll yield to the lady first. Lauren?
Oh, no, Congresswoman Bass, I wanted you to comment a little bit on the messaging around the infrastructure bill. As you know, the Democratic Party, being a big tent party, I think has just a more complicated job at messaging, being a party that believes in government, believes that government works. But you have a Republican Party that supports absolutely none of the things, of course, for the most part, that passed, like, you know, $65 billion in broadband. But can you comment a little bit on the messaging in the Democratic Party? We know it's a big tent party. We know it's a complex party with really four separate factions. And these are problems, of course, the Republicans don't have. But can you comment on messaging?
Sure. I mean, you know, I do think we always struggle with messaging because we speak in paragraphs. But I think that one of our problems around the messaging of both bills, the infrastructure bill as well as Build Back Better, is that we have focused on the dollar amount and we focused on technical terms like reconciliation that nobody knows what that means, as opposed to talking about childcare, talking about cutting costs to families, talking about preschool, universal preschool, healthcare, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. I mean, I think what is in the bill is very popular and very needed by the American people. But as long as we focus on it's not 3.5, it's now 1.75, and it's the BBB bill and all of that, we get lost in jargon as opposed to getting lost in the benefits that the American people will experience.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, I have a question. Okay, I am very enamored at your ability to get along with those who perhaps try to set you up, and I'm also honored and of your first, you know, being the first of a whole lot of things, a speaker, you know, of a state legislative body, the fact that you turned down those who wanted you to run against Nancy Pelosi. I'm just enamored. But what I really admire about you is your psychological demeanor and what you did back when you wanted to bring the orange man up on to have him evaluated for his psychological deficiencies. So I'm really moved about that. So what my question is, how is it? Do you have any say so in your voice? You know, once you leave Congress to go back to California, how will we replace all that you have brought to the table?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate what you said. Well, you know, if I am successful and become the mayor of Los Angeles, I absolutely plan to continue to be involved in national politics and national issues. I think it's really critical, especially for us at this time. I would not have decided to not run for re-election if I didn't feel confident that there was a very qualified, committed person to run in my place. It was a big decision to not run again for Congress. It's not like I grew tired of it. I mean, I love the work. I especially love the international work, the fact that I get to work on domestic as well as foreign policy issues, and my focus is Africa. But, sometimes you're called home, and we are having a severe humanitarian crisis on the streets of Los Angeles, and that's what brings me home. But I also think that what is happening in Los Angeles is of national significance, especially to African Americans around the country, and I imagine we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of getting into that, let's get into that a little bit, Congresswoman Bass, because the president, of course, he signed the bill yesterday. And part of that includes a hiring provision authored by yourself that will allow agencies like LA Metro to prioritize for the hiring of local residents for projects that are taking place in their own backyard. This provision also applies for highway construction projects. Can you speak to the importance of that? And as you said, the national implications on that, not just for those in Los Angeles.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, it actually was pretty startling that federal transportation dollars could not prioritize people in the neighborhoods. One of the things I've really appreciated about the Biden administration is their willingness to talk about race. And so the whole issue that's being discussed now around highway construction, all of us have known this. Many of us have lived through highways, freeways, cutting up our communities. And so the recognition that that has had a discriminatory impact, it's even double if you can't even be considered a priority for the jobs that are coming through your neighborhood. In Black communities around the country, there's always the frustration that when there's any major development project, you go to the work site and you don't see anybody that looks like us. And so what this bill essentially does is it removes the regulation that says federal transportation dollars cannot prioritize people from the neighborhoods where the projects are. When these projects go through our neighborhoods always suffer from high rates of unemployment. So we should be able to be first in line for the jobs that are cutting up our neighborhoods.
Yeah, Dr. Chavis, I know you had a question there.
Well, I just want to again salute Congresswoman Karen Bass and wish her all the best. And we rest assured the Los Angeles Sentinel, the LA Wave, Our Weekly, the LA Focus, and all of our, we have Inglewood today. We have about 15 newspapers in and around Los Angeles, and we're all going to be covering your campaign.
Thank
But
you.
I just want to go back to something that you said that I agree with you. Look, the attack on Vice President Kamala Harris is racist. It is sexist. It is almost a denial. And on the question of the messaging, yes, I think the Democrats have to get a focused message that connects the quality of life issues, that the progress. The truth of the matter is the Biden-Harris administration has already made so much progress, but a lot of the American people are not conscious of the progress that has been made in the first year compared to the 4 years of Donald Trump. So, but I also want to say on the record that I'm critical of the media itself. CNN, MSNBC, they're reacting to Fox News, and sometimes I can't tell the difference between the two. And I think that the media also has a responsibility not to be caught up in a whirlwind of being reactionaries, a whirlwind of denying the importance of progressive consciousness and progressive thought. And that's why the Black press is so important. So we're going to be with you, Congressman Bass, all the way through.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
And Lauren Burke, the Burke File, and NNPA journalist, I know you had some more questions for the Congresswoman as well.
Sure, Congresswoman. I wanted you to comment a little bit on homelessness. I know it's a big problem in California. What you would do if elected mayor? We, on our side of the country here, have, I'm sure you've noticed in D.C. as a member of Congress, there's an issue in D.C. as well. And unfortunately, the mayor here, Bowser, is really just trying to get them out of the line of sight, line of view. So I just wanted you to comment, if you could, about what you might do as mayor of Los Angeles with regard to homelessness.
Sure. Well, absolutely. Let me just describe the situation in Los Angeles and why I call it a humanitarian crisis. In Los Angeles, there are 40,000 people who are unhoused. Many of them, tens of thousands, are living in tents all around the city. 10 encampments, little communities of people living outside. Los Angeles, you might not know, the population is 9% African American, 9%. 40% of the people who are unhoused are African American. So if you go to our downtown Skid Row area, you see almost all African Americans there. But now the homelessness situation again has spread all over Los Angeles and into affluent areas. And so people right now are becoming very angry. They're losing their ability to be compassionate and just want to see the problem go away. And so what my big concern is that if that's the way you view the problem, it can lead to people getting arrested. One of the candidates for mayor is proposing offering people housing, and if they refuse, then they get a citation. Well, you can finish the rest of that. You know what's going to happen when that goes to warrant. And people who are homeless are described as a monolith. And actually, there are a variety of different reasons why people are on those streets. So the number one thing to do is to get people off the streets and into temporary housing immediately. And then after that, we need to address the reason why they're homeless anyway. Are they a veteran? Some homeless people work full-time or full-time students. Some people have mental illness. Some are substance abuse. And a large number are people who were incarcerated but have been released because of certain reforms that have taken place in California. But unfortunately, we didn't plan for their release. And you know, during the whole war on drugs and get tough on crime, when mass incarceration was being implemented in this country, a lot of laws were passed to continue to punish people once they get out, which is one of the reasons why they wind up homeless. They can't get a job, they can't get a car, they can't get a driver's license, they might not be able to move home if there are people in the household that are felons or nearby. And so we've essentially left people with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And so we need to address the root causes of homelessness. But this, I am concerned, is going to become much more of a national issue because of COVID. We know of the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on the Black populations, health-wise and economically. And so I'm worried that even if we were to get 40,000 people off the streets of Los Angeles today, another 40,000 might come on the streets because the COVID supports are getting ready to run out. So I think that this is very much a national issue. I think what's happening in LA is a bellwether for the rest of the country. And just think about where we were a year ago. We were going through a racial reckoning. Systemic racism was discovered. It was a period of enlightenment. And what has happened historically in our country? We have a period of enlightenment, and then we have a huge backlash. And one of the centers of that backlash is a spike in crime that's happening around the country. And so the question in the spike of crime has been, well, is that the result of police reform? We've demoralized the police, we've tied their hands. And so now we need to just forget about reform and go back to the way we always did things. And let's just, in a massive way, suppress crime. Well, those things are also playing out in Los Angeles, too. We have had a spike in crime. Now, California and Los Angeles has been a very, very liberal state focused on criminal justice reform. And I am worried now that we're going to go backwards and remove or reverse some of the reforms that we've had and have the police in Los Angeles be far less transparent and accountable. I think all of those are issues that are important around the country. Are we going to move forward nationally with reforming our criminal justice system? Are we going to move forward with police reform? How is the backlash that is happening now? What is going to happen around the country? I mean, we saw critical race theory, which, you know, when it comes to the elementary and secondary level is an invention. It's a legal theory, but that is being used to say we don't want to tell the truth about U.S. history. We don't want to talk about race. And so how this is going to get played out in the mayor's race when it comes to crime, criminal justice reform, policing, poverty, homelessness, all of those issues are being played out in Los Angeles. And I think that what is happening in LA, there will be a lot of lessons for the nation to learn.
Yeah, we're talking with Congresswoman Karen Bass, the representative out of California, who's running for mayor of Los Angeles. Representative Bass, a successful run means that you won't be in Congress anymore. We're seeing the struggles that Congress, the Senate, more importantly, is getting the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. We're seeing the struggles that they're having with voting legislation, even as voter repression and suppression laws pass throughout the country. People are looking at this as perhaps it's high time to get out for some Democrats. How are you seeing this, and what is the implications of potentially losing another Democrat in the House?
Well, losing another Democrat in the House, if you're referring to my seat, it won't be lost. There will be another Democrat that replaces me. Now, in California, we are losing a seat, but it's not clear that that's going to be a Democratic seat. The state of California is overwhelmingly Democratic, I'm happy to say, especially now, given the state of the Republican Party. But I am not leaving because of what is going on in Congress. I am leaving because of what is going on in Los Angeles. And there was a big call for me to come home. And I think if your hometown is in trouble, you address that. You know, the homelessness that is happening in LA, I do believe, and I know that it's happening in a lot of other cities, but the wave of evictions that is going to be coming, it's actually beginning now, I think is going to have a massive impact in the country. And of course, that's going to be a disproportionate impact in the African-American community. I must say, in the BBB bill, the Build Back Better bill, see, I did what Democrats do. I spoke in jargon. There are thousands of vouchers for housing in that bill. And it's just one more reason why it's so important for that bill to pass. That bill will make a dent in the evictions and the homelessness that we know is going to come when the COVID relief ends.
Yeah, Lauren Burke, I want to throw it back to you.
Oh, Congresswoman, can you touched on it a little bit there. Can you talk a little bit about the seats in California with regard to Chairwoman Waters and Barbara Lee, and what the likely scenario may be? I thought I read someplace that Chairwoman Waters might run another seat. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case. There are three African Americans from California. Barbara Lee, who is in Northern California, I believe her seat will be fine. And the point, though, is to make sure that there are two seats that African Americans can win in the Los Angeles area. And, there have been a lot of iterations of maps. And one iteration did have, it was just a difficult configuration in both my seat and hers. But I think the latest iterations, it's okay. So there should be two seats that African Americans can win in the Los Angeles area.
Okay. Thank
Bobby
you.
Henry.
Yeah. I applaud you, first of all, Congresswoman, for going back home to take what you have done in DC to bring it back home to make sure that it is operable and is functioning like it's supposed to. The similarity to me in your legislation and what Franklin Roosevelt did with the New Deal in terms of infrastructure and bringing jobs, how have you thought about, or how can you incorporate those individuals who perhaps have had a criminal record to be involved with this whole process of what you're doing in jobs and infrastructure?
Well, it is absolutely critical. I mean, if you are going to impact the hiring of African Americans, you have to add in criminal justice records because of the disproportionate impact. You should know that I'm working on legislation right now that's bipartisan legislation that calls for the establishment of programs to help people reintegrate back into society. I mean, it used to be in our American culture that if you committed a crime and you did your time, you paid your debt to society, you were incorporated back in. That is no longer the case. And so a lot of people are chronically unemployed who have been incarcerated. And so I want to be able to allow those individuals to run their own programs to essentially help people coming out of prison, with support groups and helping them get, housing, jobs, et cetera. There are some jobs, though, that are more than willing to hire formerly incarcerated individuals. And fortunately, many of those jobs are in the construction trades. And so this bill that was signed yesterday will definitely impact that.
Yeah. Dr. Chavis, your closing thoughts. I know the Congresswoman has to leave us shortly. So your closing thoughts?
Yes. Well, again, we thank Congresswoman Karen Bass for her leadership, her continued leadership, and wish her well now with the race for the next mayor of Los Angeles. And to all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, we want to align ourselves in the Black press to make sure that we continue to inform our communities of what's happening in Capitol Hill, what's happening in our major cities, and other communities. I think these trials, the one in Wisconsin and the one in Georgia, they're really not just depressing, but there's a sense of outrage in Black America that after George Floyd, that after Breonna Taylor, we're still going through these devastating racist, white supremacist acts in the courtrooms of America. And so, Congresswoman Bass, I just want to thank you and reassure you that the Black press is going to stay on the front line.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chavis, for your leadership and for everybody that was on the call today. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly thank you. And the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Midwinter Training Conference kicks off in January on the 19th. We'll be at the Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood, Florida, through the 22nd, where the theme is the publishing industry advancing the Black press of America, reaffirming, engaging, and empowering. We'll bring you more details as the days wind down here, but there will undoubtedly be a virtual component. So stay tuned and make plans to participate with this very special Black Press of America Midwinter Training Conference. And we end today with another Black fact. John Mercer Langston was the first Black man to become a lawyer when he passed the bar in Ohio in 1854. When he was elected to the post of town clerk for Brohelm, Ohio in 1855, Langston became one of the first African Americans ever elected to public office in America. John Mercer Langston was also the great uncle of Langston Hughes, famed poet of the Harlem Renaissance. So that's our Black fact. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, 7:30, we'll have another special show for you. Everybody stay safe and stay well. We'll see you then.